reading from the Acts of the Apostles. Paul reached also Derbe and Lystra, where there was a disciple named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. The brothers in Lystra and Iconium spoke highly of him, and Paul wanted him to come along with him. On account of the Jews of that region, Paul had him circumcised, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they traveled from city to city, they handed on to the people for observance the decisions reached by the apostles and presbyters in Jerusalem. Day after day, the churches grew stronger in faith and increased in number. They traveled through the Phrygian and Galatian territory because they had been prevented by the Holy Spirit from preaching the message in the province of Asia. When they came to Mysia, they tried to go on into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So they crossed through Mysia and came down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision. A Macedonian stood before him and implored him in these words, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." When he had seen the vision, we sought passage to Macedonia at once, concluding that God had called us to proclaim the good news to them. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Let all the earth cry out to God with joy.
Let all the earth cry out to God with joy.
Sing joyfully to the Lord, all you lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful song.
Let all the earth cry out to God with joy.
Know that the Lord is God. He made us, his we are, his people, the flock he tends. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. The Lord is good. His kindness endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations.
Let all the earth cry out to God with joy.
Alleluia, alleluia.
Alleluia, alleluia.
If then you were raised with Christ, seek what is above, where Christ is seated, at the right hand of God.
Alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "If the world hates you, realize that it hated me first. If you belong to the world would love its own. But because you do not belong to the world, and I have chosen you out of the world hates you. Remember the word I spoke to you. No slave is greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you. If they keep my word, they will keep yours. And they will do all these things to you on account of my name, because they do not know the one who sent me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. We find ourselves on the weekend of a time of both civic and religious remembrance. It's Memorial Weekend. I'm not going to talk to you about hot dogs and beer and baseball, all of which I like, by the way, and very much in favor of. Don't get me wrong. But I want to, if you'll indulge me for a moment, and with patience bear it, I want to tell you a story, if I may. About a young man, 17, just on the cuspice of 18, who graduated from high school. And that summer, he got a letter from what then was called the Selective Service, or the Draft Board. And when you opened it, it began with greetings. Well, there was no greetings there. It got greetings. And you were told when to report, so on. And this young man went to the reporting station, went through basic training, and then was sent to Virginia, and from Virginia to New York to get on a military ship with hundreds of other young men. And they were heading over and through the North Atlantic. They didn't know the mission because they didn't tell you. So that way you couldn't give up information that you didn't know. And these young men got outside of a place called Normandy for the Great Invasion in Europe, to drive the Nazis out, defeat Nazism. And they got on a Higgins land craft that brought them to the shore. And Higgins developed those landing crafts in New Orleans, where I'm from, born and raised. And as they're sitting on the ship, about to board, a Catholic chaplain, a Protestant minister, and a Jewish rabbi went around to each man and said, "What religion are you?" And if you said none, it's fine. And inside, they gave them an army issue of a daily Bible reading. And inside was a letter written by President Franklin Roosevelt on the importance of prayer and faith during this time. And when the lieutenant came by to get them on the boat, he told the boys, "Run until you're shot. Run until you're shot." And they climbed the cliffs in Normandy in the face of German machine guns and fire and all of that. They were supposedly softened up by the Navy lobbing bombs in. You know how well that worked. This young man took part in the Italian campaign to liberate Italy, and then entered Berlin with the troops to end World War II in 1945, and then returned home. This young man was my father, one of the finest men I ever knew. I only wish I could be half the man he was. I'm not even close, as many of you have reminded me. But my thoughts today are for those people who serve in the military, who put themselves in harm's way. And I think down through the centuries, they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. This is not political. So whatever you do not come to me with that stuff, because I'm telling you, it's not going to go well. It's not political. It's about honoring those who allow us to sit here with religious freedom and religious liberty because they gave the last full measure of their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And there's something incredibly righteous and just. More people have been freed under the United States than any other country in the world. When the French, I don't particularly care, but anyway, the French wanted to give a token of their appreciation to the United States, they didn't give the Statue of Equality. They gave the Statue of Liberty. And when you read Pope John Paul, he writes time and again, because he grew up under Nazism and communism. He talks about the God-given, inalienable human right of freedom. Freedom of conscience, freedom to think, freedom to speak, freedom of assembly. Franklin Delano Roosevelt knew this. The four freedoms. And the first and most important freedom, I taught in 4 law schools. Not that that means anything other than you probably hate me more. But if you dealt with lawyers, you probably do. I don't blame you. I asked first-year law students, what is the First Amendment and the first freedom in the Bill of Rights? They never get it right. Oh, freedom of speech? No. Freedom of assembly? No. If you're from Louisiana, it's the freedom to carry a gun. No. The first and most fundamental freedom is the freedom of conscience. It's religious liberty. Read it. Go home and get it. Read the Constitution. It's the freedom of conscience. Because without that you have nothing. Because you see, that's where God speaks to you. Most intimately and most personally. In your own conscience. And there are so many who have given the full measure so that we may sit here this morning in relative safety. Relative safety. And I really don't care what you think about war and all of that kind of stuff. That's not the issue. The issue is the sacrifice. And the sacrifice given by families. We have given so many of our young. In Flanders fields, the poppies grow, row upon row. You go to Arlington Cemetery, although sometimes the seminary reminds you of a cemetery. Anyway, you have that. You have that sense of just awe. The tomb of the unknown soldier. It's amazing. It's amazing the sacrifice at this very moment. We have soldiers in Afghanistan and spread throughout the world in faraway places with strange sounding names. And they make those sacrifices, and so do their families. And they put themselves in harm's way. we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude. Not simply, thank you for your service. It's nonsense. Might as well say, have a nice day. Our country, especially with the Veterans Administration, owes, yes, owes, O-W-E-S, owes these people everything that they can give, offer, help, assist. Because every day they put themselves on the line for us. And like I say, that young boy was my father. And I buried he and my mother. He died at 93. He worked until his mid-80s when he couldn't work anymore. And he was, one thing he never did, he never talked about the war. He never talked about what he did and what he saw and what he had to do. Never. I asked him once, the kid, and he said, boy, don't ever ask me about the war. He got up and walked out. I never did again. He never talked about it. It wasn't an issue of bragging. It wasn't an issue of boasting. Because there's, and I'm not a fan of him, of he, William Tecumseh Sherman. Anybody who's visited Atlanta knows what a scoundrel he was. But anyway, he said, war is hell. And it is. It's hell for those who fight it and live in the trenches and live in cold boxcars and have rations that they have to be very careful with. And war's hell for the families who wait for them to come home. Because the last thing you want is to have a military person come to your house and ring your doorbell. It's usually a notice of death. It's a very difficult thing. But we, on this Memorial Day, we commend them to the Lord. All those who have died in the service of our country. And I'd like to close, if I may, please, and thank you for your patience, with a stanza or two. I'm not going to sing it, don't worry. I can't. From America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for heroes provide in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every grain divine. O beautiful for patriot's dream, that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undiminished by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. God bless America. God bless all the people who make sacrifices every day. And God bless those who keep America, America. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Excellent. Hardly. Yeah.
Be